Paolo. How are you doing today?
I did great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. Paolo is on the team that works on Socket Supply, and he's the CEO. So today, Paolo would be telling us a bit more of Socket Supply. So, first of all, tell us what the project is about. What is Socket Supply?
Sure. So, Socket Supply makes a project called the Socket Runtime. Socket Runtime helps web developers to create apps for any OS. So, that's web developers creating native apps for any OS, desktop and mobile, using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or whatever their favorite libraries or frameworks are. And it means that there's no new languages for them to learn. It's plain old web tech. And it should be familiar. It should be really familiar to anybody who's been doing web development. And it's the ability to create universal applications for any operating system. But I think probably what's really helpful is to understand where this fits in the big picture with everything else, especially because there's a lot of different runtimes out there. There's browser runtimes like Safari or Chrome or Firefox. And then there's server runtimes like Node.js or Dino or Bun. And then there's application runtimes like Electron or Tori or Socket. And I guess it's also probably pretty helpful to talk about what an application runtime is. A lot of people have heard about browsers. A lot of people have heard about server runtimes, but application runtimes are kind of new. And we've seen them emerging over the last couple of years. Electron especially has been something that was welcomed by web developers because browsers simply don't do all of the things that we would like them to do. Either they don't do them or can't do them. In some cases, won't do them. But when we want to build software, we need features, and browsers don't have them. And so that's why we've seen runtimes like Electron or Tori welcomed over the years. And some of the most successful software has been built with these application runtimes. Some of the most successful or most popular software over the last decade, like Visual Studio Code, Figma, Slack, Notion. So basically, the browser is no longer the only way to build the web. The web has a great big future outside of the browser, and we've seen that future arrive, and there we are today, and here we are building Socket Runtime.
That's actually a lot of construction. So if we're gonna pick out who Socket Supply is for, you could say Socket Supply is for developers mostly.
Definitely for web developers specifically.
Right.
And I think that there's something that is really unique about Socket, and that it's not just to help developers to build software that runs on any platform, but it's also to help people to build that software and then connect it together, right? And so one of the core really important features about Socket is the peer-to-peer capabilities and the local first capabilities. So we expose UDP as a JavaScript API with the ability to listen for connections, and we expose Bluetooth with the ability to expose services, listen, and sync with other devices in proximity. And we also provide a file system, a robust local file access that's compatible actually with the Node.js file system API. And we do this because, we looked at the cloud, right? And we see that the cloud is this kind of relationship where you're like a tenant and the cloud is like a landlord. And so there's really no way to build software these days that doesn't mean, tens of thousands of hours in front of a computer understanding and debugging how services fit together. And you really end up in this sort of relationship where you're leasing this infrastructure from this company, and we just don't believe that this is the right way to be creating the foundation for the internet, is for it to be this for-profit infrastructure. And actually recently we've seen a really good example of why this is a bad idea. Docker, which is which kind of everybody already knows about, so I won't explain it, but Docker recently decided to stop supporting open source projects and told everybody, hey, either come and pay for our service, or we're just going to sort of take it all down. And anybody who comes along who decides to pay for the namespaces that you have, those people will be in control, right? So, for example, curl has about 5 billion downloads or something, some crazy number of downloads. And, curl is an open source project. There's no business around it. And so, anybody who decides to come and claim that namespace and start paying for it could, start sending malicious versions of curl to all of the many millions of people who are downloading it every day. This is just not the ideal situation. This situation where we are beholden to landlords to have the infrastructure that we need to create software that connects people. So Socket's goal really is, as you said, developers, but specifically web developers, and then a way to allow people to develop the software and then connect it without the need for infrastructure that is that's infrastructure that you need to pay somebody to use. We think that peer-to-peer gives us the opportunity to have infrastructure of a commons, to allow people to connect directly to each other and leverage this wealth of hardware that has proliferated over the last several decades.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I get the point of Socket Supply right now. But how is this project funded? Or where'd you get funds from?
Sure. So we have investors because we also have a open source, a commercial product, which is orthogonal, but it's complementary to the open source project. So some people who have a model where they create open source but also a product, they have an enterprise version of the open source. Well, that's not our plan. Our plan is to have the best runtime for web developers to create peer-to-peer powered native applications on any platform, and there is no condition to that. The tools that we create, they help people to deploy ad hoc peer-to-peer networks at scale. So, if you're interested in deploying applications as a large entity, you're probably also interested in how they perform in the wild. You're probably interested in application performance management and observability, and those kinds of things are what we're providing. And investors think that that's interesting to them. So we have some partners who have backed us financially, and there's an understanding that doesn't have any real influence over the direction or any kind of really material impact on the open source side of the initiative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But is this project using Hypercore protocol?
It doesn't use Hypercore protocol, but it is something that can provide the foundation for somebody who wanted to use it. So right now, as far as anybody knows, it's not possible to run Hypercore on mobile, for example, if you're a JavaScript developer. It's just not possible to do. And the same is true with other projects similar to that, like AutoMerge or YJS. There's a lot of really cool, really interesting peer-to-peer protocols that have never really been able to make it onto mobile or onto to every single platform, all in one kind of familiar API. And that's really what we're bringing, is this ability to say, hey, are you using Hypercore? Are you using YJS? Are you using AutoMerge? And would you like to use these things as the average web developer on mobile or on desktop or anywhere for that matter, all with a single kind of familiar developer experience?
So Socket Supply acts like a bridge between people who want to use Hypercore protocol and Hypercore protocol itself, right?
Well, it acts like the foundation.
Okay.
So Hypercore really is it's an append-only log, right? And there's a lot of projects that are similar to that are also really interesting, and they also are not, they don't have a networking capability to them, right? And so we're really providing that foundation that allows people to build an application, connect it to the network, and connect to other peers on the network, and then use these really interesting, really cool libraries on top of it, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. So what parts of Socket Supply are open sourced, and where can these code repositories be found?
Yeah, so if you go to socketsupply.co, there's lots of links, there's lots of information. If you go to the bottom, the footer of the website, there's lots of links to get in touch with us, lots of links to GitHub. There's also some kind of information about our product. And then the documentation for the open source project itself is on a domain sockets.sh. But we're consolidating that documentation and the website and all of that stuff at the moment, and we're going to be releasing on the 28th. But all of this is open source right now. So on our GitHub, if you feel like being kind and going and checking it out and giving it a star, it's github.com/socketsupply/socket.
Thank you so much for stating the link. And yes, I would be kind to give you a star. Well done. Okay, so what are the plans for Socket Supply in the next few months, the next year? What do you have in store for Socket Supply?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we're really focused on stability at the moment. This is the first release, and this represents a few years worth of work. We're very much focused on trying to align with web standards and trying to invent really as very little as possible. In fact, we're starting to get involved with a working group for runtimes. We're starting to which is a web working group. I believe it's called WinterWG, which is the working group for runtimes. So we're really big advocates of trying to align as much as we can with the web. The web, as we kind of think about it, is of course the web stack, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but also the ability to link and be linked to. And so, I said earlier, one of the big goals is, for us to align with web developers, to align with web standards, and to be a thing that web developers find familiar. And so what we're going to really be focused on over the next 3 to 6 months is just stability and kind of taking it from beta into the very first actual version 1, right? So we were just in alpha. Now we're going into beta on the 28th, and then that's going to be accompanied by the release of a lot of really interesting projects that we've been working on that use this. So we've been working on some projects which help people to understand how to build something like a Telegram chat application, for example, or a Figma-like application, or something that has multi-user, real-time, peer-to-peer, socket-based interactions in it. And so, a lot of people they like to sort of maybe say that Socket is the spiritual successor to Socket.io. And a lot of web developers remember Socket.io as being this really fun library to use because it gave them real-time sockets. And Socket Runtime gives them the exact same thing as Socket.io, but without the need for any servers. We really want to focus on giving people some really interesting starter projects to kind of kickstart, their ideas and help them, to wrap their head around some of the ideas, because it's different. It's different from building client server applications. People are really used to the whole client server paradigm, and thinking about peer-to-peer is slightly different. And so giving people something that is, one, familiar because it's aligned with web standards. We try to invent as very little new things as possible. But then, at the same time, there's this, very new thing, peer-to-peer, right? Symmetrical networks and things like that. So we're going to be really focused on giving people things that help them to establish a kind of mental model about how stuff works.
Thank you so much for going in depth about your plan. What if someone wants to join the community, maybe to contribute? How does that happen?
Well, I think that the best way to contribute, if you're interested, if you want to be an early adopter, or if you just want to ask a lot of questions, or you want to get started, the best thing that you can do is go to the GitHub. And again, that's github.com/socketsupply/socket. That's where you can open GitHub issues. You can kind of track our progress. You can interact with us. I mean, we have all this other stuff like Twitters and Discords and all that. And all that's on our website. And we're really interested in knowing what people are interested in building. And I know that, it's been a very, very, very long time getting to the point where we've been able to give the average web developer the capability of peer-to-peer. I mean, that's been something that we've all, as a community, we've really wanted this capability for a long time. And so now that it's here, we're really interested in hearing what people would like to build, and it really helps us to prioritize what sort of features we work on, or what kinds of things that are critical that maybe we haven't thought about, but other people who have use cases, they just it would be great for them to come into our community, come onto our GitHub, and and say, hey, like, I'm trying to build X, and what would really be helpful is if you supported Y. We're really super happy to chat with people about stuff like that, and I just encourage people to not be shy. Come on and tell us what they're interested in and what they want to build, and we can see how we can help them.
Thank you so much for taking time to explain and take us through Socket Supply. Thank you.
Yeah, Kayla, no worries. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.